I have a theory, and my theory is that nations and their ability to compete are really based on two things. One is the access to natural resources, and the second one is the access to great technology and technological minds. Now, in the case of Armenia, when it comes to natural resources, we're not the most blessed, right? We're a landlocked country, and we've got some natural gas, but on the whole, we have to import a lot. However, when it comes to technology and the ability to build technology and have a technology-based economy, 20% of the growth of this country's economy in the last couple of years has been based on the IT sector, which is really encouraging. And so when you think about change and you think about how do you take and harness that technological group to create what I like to call disruption, as you can see, I'm a big fan of the concept, and the purpose of my speech today is to talk about how do we get all of those arrows pointing in one direction. So instead of being a service-based economy, we can be an economy that builds products, technological products, that create more rapid change and help grow that 20% to 40 and 50%. So today I'm from New York. I'm here to talk about the process of disruption. Over the last 10 years, I've built a company that works with very large brands like Ford, Enterprise, and Revlon, multi-billion-dollar brands, to help them create disruptive ideas, and also small causes like traffic and human trafficking, in order to help those small causes build more traction with disruptive ideas. And so this is the process that over the last 10 years that I've honed over time. And I'm here to share it with you guys. But before we go forward, we have to look in the past. And the past is really sort of looking at three, and I'm sorry, juxtaposed to the speech that we just had, these are all men, but they're fantastic men, and there's a lot of fantastic disruptive women as well, but I focused on three fellows in particular. Who is this? Does anybody know? I.M. Pei, right? Phenomenal architect. He is basically really the architect of disruption within architecture. So his belief was that architecture was an art, certainly, but there was also based on a foundation of necessity. And if you look at the theory of disruption, the idea that any idea you create is based around human necessity is first core. So I'm going to show you these three examples, and we're going to go through them because these are the structural foundations of how you build the disruptive process. The next one, someone's got to know who this is. Anyone? Thank you, Jerry Garcia. So anybody know who the Grateful Dead is? Show of hands. All right. Seminal rock and roll band. They wanted to be like nobody else, right? So when they created the Grateful Dead, it was like they got on stage, they started jamming, and everybody's like, who are these people? These guys are crazy, they're on drugs, they're making this sound that is so left from where everybody else was in the right that it was just this moment of just, my God, I mean, they're just completely different. And then all of a sudden, people started to follow them. They created their own genre. So they went where nobody else was. And that's another foundational tenet to the idea of disruption and the theory of disruption. This one you got to know, Sir Richard Branson, right, of course. So this is a guy who, when you look at lazy industries, take the story of what happened between him and British Airways. And when I say him, I'm referring to Virgin Atlantic. So Virgin Airways, Virgin Atlantic in general, they created just a consistent focus on the customer, which was this like radical concept, right, that the customer is always right. And there's this talk coming up where we're going to get deeper into that about customer service, and in Armenia in particular, how customer service plays in. But the idea in particular about how he looked at British Airways and said, it's a bunch of old guys, don't understand technology, don't understand the customer, don't really want to be in that place where they service the customer, came in and disrupted the idea. And he constantly does that by studying industries, finding the lazy ones, and then creating this disruptive mechanism, and turns the tables, and then ultimately becomes this billionaire who buys this private island and does all these great things. So also does phenomenal things for the world. So the question today is, why is disruption relevant to you? And why is it relevant to Armenian? And how does it play into this idea of change that we're talking about today? Well, it's actually, we'll just take it by the numbers for a minute because I think it's rather obvious when we look at a few statistics or charts. So we are living in an era of rapid change, right? And you look at the internet and what it's done in the last 15, 16 years, and specifically in the last 5 years, as it's really building a clip. I mean, look, for instance, at, one industry in particular, album sales, right? This is an absolute nosedive. You'd be hard-pressed to go out and find a record store in New York City or in San Francisco or anywhere really in the world. I mean, the whole concept back to Virgin, of the Virgin megastore, I mean, they're all out of business. They don't exist anymore. And this is in the span of what? Maybe 6 years, right, from 2000 to 2006. Add to that, if you look at quarterly newspaper print sales, right? And you look at how disrupted the industry has been by technology, and that just downward curve down to the bottom of basically negative 29.7% growth, right? It's just in the toilet because the internet has completely disrupted it. And lastly, my favorite one, remember in the 80s and the 90s, we used to always go on the weekends and they'd say, make it a blockbuster night, right? And you'd go, now it's impossible to make it a blockbuster night. I mean, you can't do that, right? Because it was a $6 billion company 6 years ago. Or sorry, $16 billion company. Now it's bankrupt. Doesn't exist, Blockbuster. We'd get 2, 3 videos, we'd sit in front of it, eat popcorn, and get fat and do all of these things. Doesn't exist. Now instead you just pop on the internet, put Netflix in, type in Netflix and go online and pick whatever movie you want, or iTunes. So it's, I mean, fundamentally been dismantled by the internet and by technology. And so these ideas of disruption and these concepts just have fewer competitors. And this is, I put a blue ocean up here because I look very often at the blue ocean and red ocean theory of business when it comes to the Japanese and how they look at it. The red ocean is full of blood because all of the competitors are there sort of killing each other. And the blue ocean is where the smooth sailing is. I see a lot of people sort of shaking their head. I actually fundamentally think that this theory is both Japanese and Armenian, which, you know, it's a good combination. Because I think we think like this kind of innately. But the question is, how do you calibrate and find that blue ocean? Let's look at a few really great modern examples of people who have found that blue ocean. I always wanted to be a teacher, so you'll have to indulge me. This is a little bit of a pop quiz. I always wanted to spring a pop quiz on kids, you know, be like, hey, not that you're kids, but these are the smartest people basically in the world in this room, so let's see how smart. So I like to play the what if game in the pop quiz. So what if, it's not very bright, but what if for every pair of shoes you could buy, a poor child also gets a pair? Anyone? Bam. Tom's. I think this exists in Armenia, actually, yeah? Okay. So Tom's, right? This is a fantastic company. It's actually a client of ours. They're a $350 million business that they started out with Blake, and he basically just had this vision that every kid should get a pair of shoes every time someone buys it. Now the shoes are pretty expensive and they fall apart and they're not particularly, like they don't wear well. Doesn't matter. Lazy industry, right? You look at shoes, not a lot of technological innovation. Got kind of old people at the helm who don't really get these sort of newfangled ideas that you would buy one and give one away. Connected to a cause that is completely different. You think back to the example of the Grateful Dead. He's doing something that no one else was doing, right? Everybody else was sort of in this conservative realm of like, buy a pair of shoes. We make better design shoes, more comfortable shoes. He said, no. We're going to take it into a place where nobody else is, right? So completely disruptive. $350 million later, they are well on their way to going public. Next idea, or next quiz question. What if you could rent a car without paperwork? Anyone? Sorry? Zipcar, Alice Scion. Zipcar is correct. Zipcar is a fantastic company that's been built over the last 8-9 years. Basically, when you come back to that point about foundation of necessity, they looked and they said a business traveler, or any traveler, doesn't want to mess around with the paperwork and the annoyance of having to go in and say, I'll fill out, you know, my dossier, and it's like pages and pages, like a KGB form, and basically at the end of it, it's like, okay, can I rent it? No, you're not allowed to. Here you just walk up to it, you swipe a card, you get in the car, you drive. I mean, how awesome is that, and how simple and disruptive? It's fantastic. Next idea. What if you could rent an apartment or your apartment to a person 10,000 miles away? Anyone? Airbnb, you got it. Fantastic company. I mean, if you think about how the process you would go through, let's say even 5 or 10 years ago to rent an apartment, you'd go online, or perhaps you'd make calls to a local apartment or realtor. You say, what do you have available? They send it. It's so analog, right? They just came in and they said, let's take all of that demand, all of that supply, connect it in a very simple, efficient way. It's a $130, $40 million company now. Just really simplified the whole process, right? Back to simplicity. What if you treated your customers like human beings? This is my favorite photo of all time. But this is Virgin America, right? So this is basically, I've actually been on a plane where not this exact thing happened, but something similar. They did this impromptu fashion show on the plane, which was really enjoyable and ridiculous at the same time. So that's the last of our examples. Can we go to the next one? Okay, so now we get down to the process, right? And so the process is to play the what if game, right? So everybody sort of sits around and says, everybody has these great ideas. They say, well, what if you could do this? Or what if you could do that? Well, what if we could create, okay? What if you could carry around your entire closet on your mobile phone? So you say, well, that's a fantastic idea. You're sitting around having some cognac or some beers or some sparkling water or one of those mojo drinks. Is it mojo or mojo? Whatever it is. Mojo. What if you could know whether you love a beer just by looking at the beer, not even tasting it, but know that you love it? What if you could donate to a charity and see exactly where your money went? What if you could design and manufacture a light fixture in under an hour? 3D printers, unbelievable, changing the world. Next one. And then lastly, what if you could fund a business entirely online? I know everybody in this room is familiar with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but I mean, this is such a disruptive idea. So you sit around, these are all ideas that are actually in process right now being built, right? But the question is, how do you back up and actually create that sort of the stages to go through this? I'm going to take you very quickly through the stages. And the last one is, what if Armenia was the most technologically advanced country in the world? Okay, so let's talk about the process to get there. We're not going to talk about the Armenian one yet, but we got a part of that is this discussion. Okay, but let's first look at the 5 stages of disruptive thinking. The first one is you have to define a disruptive industry, or an industry that you want to disrupt. What's a lazy industry? Okay, so let's take, for instance, the fashion industry. Okay, why is the fashion industry lazy? Because you look at it and you're like, wow, they have really cool designs and they're very innovative with the way that they cut their clothing. They're actually super lazy. I work with them all the time. So we have Ferragamo as a client. We worked with Alexis Bitar, Zappos, Saks Fifth Avenue, et cetera. And it's run by these people who are basically like very scared of technology because they think that it somehow distances themselves from the customer. So you say, okay, let's just look at fashion. Now let's then define the cliches within the fashion industry. So the cliches in the fashion industry are as follows. First and foremost, girls love to shop together. I mean, who doesn't love to shop together? It's like 2 girls walking down the street with bags. They go eat, they enjoy themselves, they're loving life. Great. Next cliche. Shopping online is a pretty lonely experience, right? It's just you in front of the computer. Where's my friend? Where are the bags? Where are the guys that are looking at us? It's not there, right? So I'm lonely. Also, online shopping in particular, it doesn't capture that same emotional fun that you have. It's like point, click, and buy, right? So this is one of our clients, Zappos. We built this client from $30 million to $100 million in revenue, which is a phenomenal amount of money for them, and they've done it all without a whole lot of emotion. It's just really point, click, and buy, which I'm amazed by, but there's a whole untapped segment there. So how do you tap into that? So what you do is you then create a disruptive hypothesis. In this case in particular, we said, what if you could shop together when you're not together, right? What an interesting concept. Yeah. So how does that work exactly? So what we did and what we do and what anyone who wants to create a disruptive concept and bring it to light does is you think of what if, sort of define the cliches, then you create an opposite to those cliches. So what if you could shop together when you're not together? And then you build out whether that's valuable or not to a consumer. Is it based on some sort of necessity, that human need to connect that we talked about, right, within the cliches? Human beings need to connect. They want to be, we're emotional characters. So we want to very much, sometimes too emotional, we want to very much connect and have that emotion as part of the experience. And so when you imbue that emotion into the experience, what happens is after you vet the concept, it comes down to, one more please, building a fantastic product. This is at the core of the whole thing, right? You have to find great architects who understand both technology and also design and UX and build something like this, what you're looking in back of me, something that actually works in harmony with the patterns of how people are using the internet and how they're using technology. What do I mean by that? There's 360,000 how-to videos. On the right hand, that would be a how-to video. So on YouTube today, 360,000 how-to videos, and probably in the time that I've spoken, another 10 or 15 have gone up there. No joke, it's just an explosion. But how-to is one part of the equation. People want to get deeper into that. This is in particular for makeup. So we built this for Mary Claire, and we've also licensed it to Revlon. This is a disruptive concept because on the left of the screen, you can see that you and your friend live can queue in via not Skype, but just through the web. You don't need anything but your laptop in front of you that typically has a camera. And the two of you can start to shop together for makeup or for clothing. And then right underneath the video, you see exactly which pieces of makeup are in there, and you can buy them. Or you can go below and change the look and say, I want to be a little bit more scandalous or a little bit more good girl or whatever you want. And basically you click on that, you see the video, you and your friend watch it. If you like it, you go off and buy. Builds emotional connectivity, brings you together, disrupts, and ultimately it drives more conversion. Why do we know this? I mean, because we study the numbers. And at the end of the day, we know that the more emotional the idea connects with people, the more they end up buying. So I wanted to, at the end of this, leave you with one more disruptive concept. We've looked for a long time at charity, and specifically Armenian charity, and what Armenian charity has done for the world, and specifically within Armenia. Phenomenal things have been done in this country with charity, phenomenal. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars of the diasporan money has been spent, in addition to, organizations like UN, et cetera, who have put money into this country, and they've done great things. My hat's off to them. I think the new world of real-time and also transparency is different from where we were, let's say, 10 years ago and 20 years ago. I think today, we very much need to sort of wake up and be very aware as people that there's a black hole concept with the youth. They feel disenfranchised, and they also feel like if they give money, they're not either going to get credit, nor are they going to understand where that money goes and directly what the impact is of that money. So in response to that research, we first did some research on this and went out and talked to people. And one person in particular always sticks in my head. I'm the godfather to his children. He drives me crazy because he's very wealthy, lives in San Francisco. He's just like kind of walks around. He's always like, well, I'm not going to give to Armenia. And I'm saying, why won't you give to Armenia? He said, well, I never know where my money goes. I said, well, okay, you don't know where your money goes. Okay, well, I'm on the board of FAR, and I tell you where your money goes because I look at the exactly like the thing. He said, no, I don't trust that. I want to see the impact. I said, okay, that was over the last couple of years. So in talking about that, that's a common thing. That's like a common part of the equation is that there's a distrust. So in response to that, I've created a group with a fantastic group of young people, some from here and also some from the States who have come over to be a part of this, and we call it One Armenia. And we're really hoping that it brings people together because for us it's about all arrows pointing in one direction and the strength in all of us. I mean, we're all very, very smart people, and the diaspora is very intelligent, but a lot of times we've divided ourselves, and I think that era is just done. I mean, that's over. It's time for unity and concentrated effort that is aligned and that is moving the country forward. So I'm going to quickly show you a video that is our launch video. We launched the full program on Monday with our first project. It's one project every month. And then after the video, I'm going to just ask you for one little favor. Thank you very much. Thank you, really. That was created to just, as I said, do one thing, is just to create unity, the transparency piece of the equation. Every project that we do, we measure the impact by distributing just a third of the funds, then tracking to make sure that they were used for their desired intent, and reporting back to people like my friend in San Francisco who's absolutely I'm gonna put him in a headlock and make him donate to this thing. But I just ask you that if you can, and I know you can, we're all on Facebook, and this is all about change. Each of us has an average of about 100 friends, so if you take the 300 people in this room and 100 friends, you get, 3,000 people. So all you have to do is pull your phone out. We have high-speed internet. There's really no excuse. If you're down with the cause, you just like it on Facebook. We drop our first project early next week. that radiates out to your network, and I ask you please to support it, because we're here, we're all part of this. I'm no different than anybody else. It's just someone had to do this, and we all just came together and did it. So please, thank you.